All right, let's begin here. News just in. Former DA Federal Chairperson James Selfe has died aged 68 after a battle with illness.
Now, Selfe is best known for his role as leader of South Africa's opposition party, the Democratic Alliance.
He first served from 1979 as a researcher in the Progressive Federal Party, the forerunner to the Democratic Alliance.
Now, he was elected to the first Democratic Parliament in 1994 and served in the National Assembly until he retired in 2021.
Selfe served as chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Justice and Correctional Affairs and was chair of the DA's Federal Council for almost 20 years until he resigned in 2019.
In 2021, Selfe testified at the Zondo Commission about corruption in correctional services, specifically with regards to Bosasa in his capacity as DA Shadow Minister for Correctional Services.
Now, in that same year, he retired from Parliament due to illness. So now let's speak to Siviwe Kwahube, who is the party's chief whip, who joins us live now. Siviwe, thank you so much for making time to speak to us this afternoon, and our condolences. This must be devastating for the Democratic Alliance.
Good evening, Bungi, and good evening to your viewers. It is absolutely devastating. Of course, James was ill for some time, but he was an incredible mentor to many of us, a friend, and somebody who still has so much more to offer in our political discourse and in our political future. But I think for me, what stands out is his contribution, not only to the DA, which is immense, but also to South Africa, and having been one of the people who were there in the first Democratic Parliament, one of the people who participated in the drafting of the South African Constitution. And so I would say he will be remembered as somebody who was a constitutionalist, somebody who loved this country, who was a dear patriot, and somebody who loved his party and his family. And so it is really, really sad, and it's personally sad for me, as James was a dear friend. And so, yes, we are mourning the loss of a giant this afternoon.
And Siviwe, of course, you know, he may have been a politician to a lot of us, and of course, speaking to him at different times as, you know, a leader within the Democratic Alliance. But as you've said now that he was a dear friend, let's talk about some of the memories that he leaves you with.
Look, he was a man with an incredible sense of humor, dry sense of humor, and somebody who, I think one of the things that I really respected about James is that he was there for a very long time. In fact, he often joked that, you know, he was the chair of the Federal Council during the time of many leaders in the DA, because he believed in the project and not just in particular leaders. And you know, having worked very closely with him during my time as the head of communications for the DA, and of course a newbie when I came in 2019, one of the things that I will always admire about him is that he always saw the value in even younger politicians, people who you know, who had not been there for as long as he had been. He showed great support, but also was always had an open mind, a keen mind to learn, to understand the changing political dynamics. And so he was not somebody who was static or somebody who was stiff in his understanding. He embraced young leaders within the organization, and often, you know, underplayed his own role in South Africa's history. And so I will miss him certainly, and I think his family, Sheila and the girls, will be incredibly devastated. And he loved his dogs and a very good glass of wine from time to time. And so that I will miss, and I will miss our long conversations about where the country is going, what needs to be done, what is the role of the opposition in a constitutional democracy, and some of the dreams that he had for South Africa. And those are the things that I will miss the most about him.
And did he play any role at all in the party following his retirement?
Look, I mean, so James, even though he retired only in 2021, he obviously had fallen ill, and so at that point he decided to spend some time with his family. And I would often seek his counsel on many things. So as I said, as having only been an MP that only served 5 years, and he was an MP that had served over 20 years, he had great stories about the first democratic parliament and how, and he was obviously sad about how things had turned out in parliament, and often reminded us about what needed to be done. And personally, one of the things that I will always be grateful to James for was that when I became the chief whip, he handed over a large file and said, these are the things that a good chief whip ought to look out for. And one of the things he greatly emphasized was the need for, cross-party to finding each other across the aisle, finding each other across party political lines, and often referenced how certain things used to work well when political parties worked well together and they would negotiate and deliberate on legislation that was important. And he often said that, one of the greatest regrets that, he often watches and sees is that often politics makes us retreat into political lagers where we cannot see even what is common between us, and that common goal being the idea of holding the Constitution and service. And so he played a tremendous role, I think, not just to me, I think to many people to whom he was friends with, to people he mentored over the years, and his contribution in the party has been immense. I don't think the DA would be where it is today without the contribution of people like himself.
Selfe, condolences once again, and thank you so much for talking to us this afternoon. That was Selfe, the DA's chief whip.